Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Journey of an Awakening Spirit. This is Kathleen Flanagan, your host, and we are streaming on the Bold Brave TV. And the purpose of the show is to help you realize you are not alone. You are in control of your life. It does not matter what your lot in life is or where you came from. We have all felt pain, suffering, hurt, abandonment, loneliness, hopelessness, etc. Felix has joined me today, as we can tell. The show helps you to take those dark moments and turn them around to create a whole new you. We were taught to be a certain way, act a certain way, and conform to society. Being socialized is not a bad thing, but it puts constraints on us. The guests I bring on the show are telling their story of where they are, where they came from, the obstacles they overcame, and where they are today. They are sharing the tools they use to recreate themselves and their life. Some of the guests are still in their process, beginning a new process, comfortable in their process, or even reinventing themselves. They are giving you tools that you can use to gain insight into themselves, to take control of their life, and become the person they are today. On podcast.kathleenmflanagan.com is a list of the guests that have been on the show with their contact information. I am aware that you may resonate with one or several of them. My desire is that this becomes a community where you have access to the people you wish to align with and utilize the tools that they have, as well as the tools being offered on KathleenMFlanagan.com. AwakeningSpirit.com is an aromatherapy-based body care line that offers alternative healing remedies that use natural and organic ingredients. We are offering a 40% discount by entering Brave TV into the coupon code. The products are guaranteed. If a product is not working, please contact me and we will reformulate specifically for you. Grandma'sNaturalRemedies.net is a CBD company that uses essential oils in every blend and either has broad spectrum or an isolate. Every product is tested and the lab results are on the website. We are offering a 20% discount by entering Brave TV into the coupon code. I start this show every week with the sound from the tuning forks. I bring in love, happiness, and balance. This sets the tone for the show and brings out the best in my guest and myself. Let's begin. I have David Ross here with us today. David converted from atheistic Satanism to Catholicism in 2009. He is the creator and host of the CVS podcast, where he interviews guests and different worldviews, faiths, and philosophy. He lives in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, with his wife and 0 children, and works full-time in a small family-run construction business. Welcome, David.
Thank you for having me, Kathleen. It's nice to see you again. Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast.
Yeah. Well, I just thought it would be kind of fun to have you on the show, and turnaround's fair play. I mean, it was a great time that we had last week, and I just want to get your views on things with a different spin on it. So I would like you to tell our audience a little bit about your journey of becoming an awakening spirit.
Well, the journey's not over. I'm taking baby steps, okay? So bear with me, but don't expect any gems of wisdom from me. But we're all on a journey. This is something you and I have in common. We see the potential that we have as humans. We might have different ideas about what that potential is or where it comes from. But I was all over the map for many years, and I've settled on Roman Catholicism, but I've always been a seeker. I've always been looking for the truth. On my honeymoon, I did an extended honeymoon with my wife. We traveled around Europe for years with no money, but just sort of like gypsies. I was doing tarot readings, and you know, and I was steeped in the New Age, what I call the New Age, and that sort of spiritualism. Although I always was rather skeptical about the supernatural component. Now I realize the supernatural component is real. But to make a long story short, I have a very checkered past. And in 2009, after having studied philosophy, Western philosophy, intensively as a hobby, I came to believe that Jesus Christ is God, and he built a church. And so I joined that church. But for 25 years, I didn't even believe in God. So the first step was discovering that I'm not God, that God is God, and that was a huge relief for me. So that's sort of the outline, and I'll let you have follow-up questions if you have any.
Well, what caused you to realize that God wasn't, I mean, that there was a God when you were avid believer, non-believer, I should say?
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, like I said, I was studying philosophy, so my journey has been largely intellectual, and that's both good and bad. It's good because the intellect is part of who we are as humans, but it's bad because we're also heart based. We're supposed to have feelings, emotions, and intuition is sort of, I guess, the bridge between the heart and the mind. And I'm very intuitive, and I am sensitive and emotional too, obviously. Um, but my journey into monotheism and into the church was largely head based, and there is a heart component, but it's not fully integrated, and that's where I'm at in my journey, and I'm really interested in connecting. And I was very touched by you. One of the reasons I was touched by you is because you shed some tears, and I wasn't expecting that. I don't think you were expecting that, and
No.
that's what I want. I want to have access to the emotions, and you gave me a little bit of encouragement at the end of our talk, saying that it's possible to connect in these sorts of things. So yeah, but my journey to God, even though I was anti-God, I was anti-Christ, I was anti-Catholic. My journey to God was largely through metaphysics and looking at ontology and these sorts of things, which like I said, are very heady and intellectual, but which have a certain value nonetheless. Does that answer the question?
Okay, so now I'm just trying to come up with a question of where I want to take this, because I think I mean, you can have what you want. It's just you have to do the work. And when you're choosing to bring God in, I mean, there is an element that your heart has to be open to God.
Yeah.
Because when you're asking God for help or assistance, or ask him to hold your hand or be carried, to take the burden off your shoulders for a while, there's an emotion that's attached to that. There's a feeling that comes through with that. And I'm assuming you have felt that, or you wouldn't be
Yeah.
in Catholicism at this point. Because for me, that was what worked for me when I thought nobody loved me and nobody cared about me. And I remember going to church, and I was in the pits of despair, and they sang Amazing Grace, and the tears just welled up, and I was sobbing, because it was almost like the first time I had ever heard those words, but I heard those words from a place of pain and suffering, and understood what that meant, and realized that God loved me, and that there was something higher than me, and that I still had hope to move on. I'm assuming you've had those kind of feelings and
I've
experiences,
had
correct?
I've had feelings, and in the Catholic Church we call it consolation. Okay, where God touches you and touches your emotions, and you feel His presence and His love and these sorts of things. I've had that, and I've had tears, but not copious tears. Okay, I have friends and guests on my podcast who have the gift of tears, and they have copious tears, and that's what I want. And I've got a prayer here that's designed to request that gift of tears, so I can have copious tears, because the saints, most of them had copious tears. I want a real sorrow for sin, contrition. I want to have that palpable feeling of contrition, not just the idea like, yes, I'm sorry for my sins or whatever. And I also want the feeling of love, the love of God. I mean, I can know that I love God, and I could say that I love God, and I do love God, and sometimes I feel it, but often I don't feel it. So I want to get more into the heart. And I'm not the only person. I'm not the only Christian. I'm not the only Catholic who struggles. And I maybe it's a cop out to blame my sex, but I am a man. I am a man. Okay, so it's like that's part of the problem. It is part of the problem. Yeah. Yeah. From what I've seen, I mean, from what I've seen, women just have an easier access to their emotions. Yeah. So
That's very true. And we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will get back with you in just a minute on that. Welcome back, everyone. This is Kathleen Flanagan with the Journey of Awakening Spirit, and we are here with David Ross. David, my suggestion is open your heart. And what that would look like for you is hard to say, but I would say a way to open your heart is, be in nature. Do you go out and hike and be in nature and hug a tree or
yeah,
experience
yeah,
that
yeah,
type? I know that you were a nomad
yeah.
for a while in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, that was more urban stuff. But yeah, we get out. My wife and I we get out of the city, the big city, Montreal. We go to the country, and it's a hop, skip, and a jump, And we do a lot of cycling. We go on really long bike rides, like 8-10 hour bike rides, and so there's a lot of beautiful scenery, and we have a couple of favorite places, a nice waterfall and stuff like that, and
Mm.
yeah, for sure. I mean that definitely helps. But there's this is a lifelong challenge for me. It's not just since my conversion. My wife used to make fun of me. I'm a robot. I don't have feelings and these sort of things. She's exaggerating, but I do have feelings. But she used to tickle me in order to make me laugh until I cried. She would just tickle, torture me until I laughed, and I laughed so hard that it was like torture. So I ended up crying, and she would do this as a sort of therapy to get some of my emotions out, because I tend to block my emotions, since childhood. So it's something I'm
Did
aware of well before my conversion, and my wife's aware of it, and she thinks it's funny. But
did you
sometimes
have a
what
traumatic
happens,
experience as a child?
well, I don't know. I mean, it's just we live in a fallen world according to the Christian teaching, and that's what I believe. And so there are things in the family that aren't ideal. Generations of pain and stuff like that. And I don't know the details, but like two of my aunts have killed themselves, and my mother's committed suicide unsuccessfully. And so it's like there's pain there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so has that affected me? Yeah, probably.
Just a
But
little.
yeah, so yeah, there's that, and what, who knows what else, but yeah, so there's trauma for sure. But sometimes because I bottle up my emotions, sometimes I'll be you know I'll go into a laughing fit for no reason, or not for no reason, but I find something funny, and then the emotions come out in a laughing fit. And I have to say that is enjoyable. It's sort of a sublimation of the emotion. It's not really the real emotion. It's sort of a tricky way of getting the emotion out. So it's not as authentic as if I were to cry, but it's still fun. I mean, it's fun having a laughing fit, right?
Oh, it is, definitely. I know when I have a laughing fit, it's usually when I watch some cat do something stupid or funny, because cats, I have 4 cats. So when they do something, or you see a video about cats and some of their antics or expressions that they do, I mean, what do? You have to laugh. And I go into a fit of laughing hysterics where tears are running down my face.
It's painful.
Um,
It's painful sometimes.
it can be, because it's hard to believe you can laugh as hard as you do when there's a cat doing that. And I have Felix is sitting here still trying to get out the door for whatever reason. And my partner came in to let the one cat out, and here's the other one. I didn't even know Shadow was in, so it's kind of funny. So if you hear banging, it's the cat trying to open the door.
Yeah.
He has to be here. Well, have you ever thought of do you have people do any kind of energy work on you, or does that go
No,
against
no,
where
no.
you
God
are in your
forbid.
life
God
now?
forbid. No, no, no. No, no,
Okay, that's what I figured.
no.
Yeah, it's not demonic, regardless of what you may think. You got to take this
Well,
dogma and take
the
show it back
church,
to Scripture.
the church forbids it. So I just try to be obedient to the church. Even when I was in the New Age, I didn't like Reiki and all that sort of stuff. I just I shy away from all that anyway. And when I joined the church just says don't touch it, so I don't touch it. But I'm not judging you or anyone else who does it, but I'm not going to do it. You can do it. I'm
No,
not going
I'm
to do
just
it.
asking. I don't know what you do or what you consider.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Well, like
because
I
a
said,
lot of
I've got
times, I mean, these things are stored in your body, they're stored in your mind, and it's about
yeah,
connecting with that part of that. And there are ways to do it without having to relive that experience or that pain. But
yeah,
it's still, you have to look at it and face it. And
yeah,
I know that when I was in Chicago, there was a point where I I was in this tsunami of emotion. I don't even know where it came from. It just popped up, and I remember talking to a girlfriend of mine, and she's like, "What's going on?" I said, "I don't know. There's just like all this emotional healing that was happening because we have to heal on an emotional level away as well. And when you open your heart, you start feeling and remembering things. What triggered that I don't know that day, but then I said that there's another tsunami coming, and I realized it was when my father had beat me pretty much to a pulp, and I threatened that man after that. I said it wasn't so much of the beating that my father had done; it was that my mother did nothing. That was what I took in and internalized, and I didn't even know that thought or emotion was there, but it was such an intense emotion. So when I talked to my mother about it, when I went back to Colorado for a week, she just raised her hands and there was just so much, and I don't know and I don't care. So what do you do with that? Well, got to find peace with it somehow, and it's all okay. But when you've got trauma like you have, there's things are going to eventually present themselves to you for you to experience that, because it's all about really opening up and releasing that, because you're holding on to it, which then shuts down the heart because I don't want to feel. But if you shut down your heart, then you're not letting love in, and that heart opening is huge.
yeah,
Everything
yeah,
changed for me when I opened my heart.
yeah,
And the
yeah, yeah.
fact that you are taking those steps, I mean, you'll get there. You can't force something like that. Truly, you cannot force
Well,
facing a trauma like that.
I do want to mention that I have concrete lived experience with the opening of the heart. And it was not a good method. The method was like sort of, um, well, I did some illegal drugs and I ended up having like panic attacks and all these sorts of things for a full year. I guess it's like a little mini mental breakdown that I had in my early 20s, I guess, like 21. Yeah, 2021. And the upside of the mental breakdown, if you want to call it that, was the rawness of the emotions. Like I was feeling everything, and it was like I appreciated it, the good parts, and it was also I was going through a dark period of recovering from all the panic attacks and all the anxiety. That was the dark part, and the dark part was very dark, but the silver lining was very bright. The silver lining was I felt alive, you know more than ever. And so it's often a crisis that will bring it about. In this
Hmm.
case it was a drug induced mental breakdown, and I do not recommend this, and please stay away from drugs, say no to drugs. But there was a silver lining, and so I'm just letting you know I've tasted it, and I know what I'm missing, by being calloused and a little bit guarded, or whatever it is. Like if there were a magic button to hit, I would hit it. But like you said, you can't force it, and I believe that God's going to work with me, and because I'm aware that there's a disconnect. I want that, and I'm praying for that, and you're going to pray for me, so it'll come.
I have a question for you. When I wanted when I was in my 20s, I wanted peace of mind. Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to backtrack for a minute. I understand about the drugs. I knew that because I did drugs when I was 16, 17 years old and ended up in a drug rehab. So I also knew that drugs can create that. And that's what scared me about drugs, was
Mm.
that it can force something upon you when you're not ready. So you live that experience. So again, I wouldn't recommend doing drugs for anything like that. And yeah, that's just too dangerous of a place to go. But what I was going to say, have you ever thought of saying a rosary novena about having your heart open? Because when I
Ah.
wanted peace of mind, I didn't know how to get it. I didn't even know what peace of mind meant until I got it. And I did a
Ah.
novena on the rosary. And when I was done with that novena, I was like, this is what peace of mind is. Oh my God. I mean, it was like all of a sudden, all this torturous mind stuff that goes on in your head was gone. So have
Nice.
you ever thought of doing that? Because the rosary, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful tools that the Catholic Church offers.
Yeah, I do pray my rosary, and I've done maybe one or two novenas, but it wasn't for really for my own issues, you know. That's a great idea, and thank you for that. Thank you for the reminder. Like, that's a powerful tool. I do pray my rosary. I don't pray it particularly well, you know, because it's difficult, and my prayer life is pretty consistent. I do about an hour a day of prayer, but it's not high quality, you know, just because of that's the nature of my, you know, generally nervous, and when I'm in prayer I'm generally rushing and stuff like that. So yeah, the prayer life is a key stepping stone to peace and to the head heart connection and to wholeness and all that. And that's a work in progress. And you know, I complain about it. I complain about my prayer life a lot online, just on my podcast, you know, how pathetic my prayer life is. But you know, God is taking what I'm offering every day. I'm offering my prayers, I'm saying my prayers, and I'm thinking about what I'm saying, you know, more or less depending on you know, the mood that I'm in or whatever. But yeah, the quality is not quite there yet. But if I could get the quality of my prayer life there, and do a good rosary, do a good novena, like I'm sure that would help. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. We're going to take a quick commercial break and we will be back shortly. Welcome back, everyone, to the Journey of an Awakening Spirit. This is Kathleen Flanagan, your host, and we are with David Ross. And we were talking to him about saying a novena. So, David, since the novena is actually a meditation, because when I do them, and I've noticed that when I do it, and I remember there were times when I did novenas and I thought I fell asleep, and then I later learned that I was in a very, very deep state of meditation because I was still moving forward on the rosary.
Oh.
So I would think I would fall asleep, but I wasn't. I just went into a very deep state of meditation, like after the first whatever they call it, decadent or whatever it's called, and by the
Decade.
fifth one, halfway through it, I would come back. And when I discovered that, I was like, oh, thank you, God, because I thought I was so bad, and I was like, shaming God or something. I was whatever Catholic guilt comes in with that. But what I found when I learned that, have you ever thought of doing deep breaths to help calm yourself down? Because I understand where you're at with that prayer thing, because when I used to do it, used to make me crazy. But when I started breathing and just calming down or doing it right before I went to bed, and then doing a novena really does put you in a deep state of meditation to where you're not going to have that head trash of, I got to hurry up and get through this. And because God's not judging you, we already know that you're doing that all to yourself. You're doing a great job of beating yourself up, and God is just sitting there going, one day he's going to get this, and I'll be
Yeah.
here when he finally gets it. So I'm just saying, have you ever had that kind of an experience, like just take deep breaths or do it right before you fall asleep at night, just to find peace with it?
Not really, you know. I have nothing against you know, breathing properly in order to calm down and these sorts of things. There's that's encouraged, you know, by the church, you know, to have the right posture and to breathe properly and these sorts of things. And I have friends who have a deeper prayer life because they are aware of their breath. And actually, one of my friends on the podcast, I've had him on many times. He used to study yoga, so for him, it's just like, you know, he just kept doing the breathing and so that really helps him. And he was a little bit neurotic when he first converted or reverted back to his childhood faith, because he thought, well, yoga, what am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? Like, and so, there's always some human element, like you said, where we're going to be a bit neurotic, worrying or whatever. And God's not worried, but we're worried. God's not worried. But, there's still things that we can do to offend God. Like if you're worshiping or adoring as God something that's not God, I mean, yeah, we should be worried about that. But my friend who was a yoga instructor, he was right with God, and he was just a little bit nervous about if he's bringing some of the Eastern stuff in with him. But finally, he calmed down with all that, and he just uses the breathing techniques, and he even stretches his body using what he learned from the East, and he's not hung up about it. So all of this to say that, yeah, breathing and all that sort of thing, I'm not used to doing that. He was, so he benefits from it. I'm not, so I would have to look into that and get used to that. I mean, it's pretty basic, right? Just breathe slowly, breathe in, breathe out. It's like, it's not going to take years of study to figure out what the idea is, but it's just the habit, like the habit of doing it. And that's what virtue is. It's a good habit, And the problem with virtue is that it needs to take the place of the other habits, which are bad habits, which we call vice. So it's like, it's just this, we just have to swap out the bad habits for, sounds easy, but in a busy day when you're worried about this, that, and the other thing, it's kind of hard to make it a priority to, breathe properly or replace your bad habits with good habits. So
I think you need to
that's
stop
where
judging everything you do. That's what I think. You're judging too much. You're putting too
Okay.
much pressure on yourself for things that don't need any pressure on. Because if you know God the way I know God, He's not going to have anything. It's a life experience, and the fact that you're at least attempting to do that is enough for God. I used to yell at
Yeah,
him all the time. My mother used to say, "Why are you yelling at God?" I said, "Why not? At least I'm talking to him. He doesn't care." Because the way I looked
yeah.
at it and the way I felt about it, if I'm yelling because I'm raging, because I'm hurting and I'm in pain, well, if nobody knows that and I can do that to God, and if I can't do that to God, then He's no God. And that's
Yeah,
how I
yeah,
looked at it. I mean, I had very strong opinions in myself about what I thought God was. When you're hurting, and if God loves you, like he claimed, people, the Catholic Church, take this away and He wouldn't care if I'm yelling at it. And then my mother said I had to do a hierarchy. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, a hierarchy? I don't have to go through the hierarchy. I mean, this is not a corporation. I used to get really angry at my mother about this stuff, because it's like,
yeah.
what are you talking about? And then I'm listening to you about, well, you got to sit a certain way, and you got to do a stance a certain way, and you got to pray a certain way. And it's like, no, you don't. No, you don't, David.
No, no, no. I'm not saying that.
Do
I'm not
David
saying
the
that.
way
I'm not.
David wants to
Yeah,
do David with God. He'll accept
yeah,
you.
yeah, 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 yeah. All I'm saying, all I'm doing is acknowledging, that one posture is better than another. Just like, I mean, just in terms of even working at your computer, like I slouch and shouldn't slouch, and breathing, it's better to have proper deep breathing rather than just constantly having shallow breathing. So I'm not saying that the church is very rigid about how to pray and what posture and how to do your breathing. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I'm agreeing with you that there are things we can do with our body that will help the spiritual journey. I also wanted to mention, in terms of yelling at God or whatever, like that's very biblical. That's what Jesus did. He wasn't yelling at God, but he was crying out in pain and sorrow, and loud lamentations, and he was very dramatic in his prayer life. So yeah, I'm not afraid of that, and it's a very Christian way to pray. So I commend you for that, and hopefully one day I'll get there. But I'm a little bit, British, stiff upper lip and all that sort of thing.
No, that's right. You're Canadian. That's right. You got all
Yeah.
those weird inhibition things going on. If you were
Anglo-Saxon.
in the
I'm
United States,
Anglo-Saxon.
you wouldn't care.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to be more brash. That's it.
Oh, that's so funny.
I'm sure I'd like to hear Donald Trump's prayers. I'm sure they're pretty brash and bold.
Oh God, please, let's not go down that place with any political stuff. I just can't even deal with it. I just can't deal
Okay,
with
okay,
it. So,
okay.
my friends and I. it's just stop. Just stop. I know you don't like Trump. I don't like Biden. We'll leave it at that. Okay? Let's just agree to disagree with this. You will never convert me into politics on any level. Can you? I just don't go down that road. I don't even like talking about it because when I was younger, my sister was a poli-sci major, and oh my God, she would practically destroy. And if she had a gun, she probably would have shot us all because we had different viewpoints, and I couldn't handle that. It's like, okay, let's not talk politics. So I learned not to talk politics because it was pretty ugly in my house when we talked politics.
Best to avoid it.
I know. So, but when we talk about spirituality or God, I mean, that's a different story because that's where there's a playing field that we're on because there's an element that we believe. And even if I don't believe in what you believe in or whatever, I'm evolved enough to where I can open up and listen to your point of view. And I have enough experiences, just like the questions you asked me on your show, or they were pretty, I wasn't expecting some of those questions at all. I'm like, well, I can answer them. I don't have a
You can get
problem.
your revenge. You can get your revenge now, so it's all good. You make
No,
me
I'm not.
squirm, so
It's
it's
not
all good.
revenge. I mean, my partner said that. It's like, don't get revenge. I said, no, this isn't about revenge. This is about taking him on my journey a little bit, like
Yeah,
just skew it a little bit because
yeah,
my concern was how dogmatic are you? And then
yeah.
what happened on that show was way beyond what I expected.
Dogmatic.
Fundamentals of Catholic dogma. I love it. But I'm just saying it, there my faith was from Catholicism. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I think the Catholic Church, in my personal opinion, is one of the strongest and closest to the highest level of spirituality as you can get. What the priests have done and the rules that they put in place for us, I think, is where I have my disagreements with. I think if they didn't put all these rules and regulations about birth control and everything else under the sun, that would be a different story. I believe in what the 10 Commandments were and what he said. There's a lot of things I believe in that. But then there's a lot that there's so much more out there. And what's going to make me a whole rounded person to where I feel more understanding of what God is, because part of that was really trying to understand what God was. That's why I went down the Eastern. That's why I looked at philosophy, because I really wanted to understand what God was and then what it meant to me. Who was he to me? Because we have personal relationships with God. I mean, that's just how I see it. We all have our own personal relationship, whatever that is, and however it looks. And I respect anybody that has their relationship with God, because at least they have a foundation that helps them when they're in a crisis.
Yeah, well, the basic foundation of my worldview now that I'm a monotheist is God the Father, and nothing can ever take that away from me. My Christianity is a leap of faith, and I don't have the philosophical certainty about the Trinity, the Incarnation, as I do about the existence of the uncaused first cause, God the Father. So there's a certain foundation that I have, and I know that some of the attributes of God. He's omnipotent, omniscient, and he's infinite in every pure perfection. So we've got the unity, the truth, the beauty, the goodness, all these transcendentals. He's infinite in all of those, and he's absolutely simple, and that he's not subject to change, and these sorts of things. So all of this I have. It's my base. It's my rock. And then the layer of Christianity and the Catholicism, the distinctives of my Catholic faith, those sit on top of that. And I could be wrong. I could belong to a false religion. I don't think I do, but I could be wrong. And so that gives me a certain flexibility when it comes to the dogmas, for example. I do believe the dogmas, but I could be wrong. So there's this sort of it gives me a certain fluidity or a more relaxed approach to my religion, because my religion is based on the certainty of God and his goodness and that he loves me and all these sorts of things that you and I have in common, because you disagree with some of the dogmas in the Catholic Church, but you and I agree about God, that he's good and that he loves us, And so that to me is the base. That's the most um, certain thing that we have. And if you have that, I'm not saying that we don't need faith. We do need to have faith, and we do need to submit. I think we do need to submit to the church that Christ built, and Christ did build a church. I believe that, but I believe it on a leap of faith. So all of this to say that you and I, our fundamental basis, I think, is the same. And then just when it comes to the leap of faith, you've sort of cobbled something together through your own research, and I've just through my research, I've decided to submit completely to the Catholic Church. So there's a lot that we have in common.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's what we as humans are. We're here to learn on our own path, to move in our own path and discover who we are in the process. And then we return to God. In my opinion, we go back. We go back into that, because I don't believe in the heaven and hell at all.
Yeah,
We had that discussion. But we're going to go
yeah.
ahead and take a quick commercial break, and we will touch on that when we get back. Welcome back, everyone. This is Kathleen Flanagan, your host with the Journey of an Awakening Spirit, and we have David Ross in the room with us today. And right before commercial break, he was getting ready to say something about believing in heaven and hell. So, David, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think that we have free will. We can really choose. Our freedom is not absolute. I mean, there are constraints on our free will, but it's just natural to conclude that there will be consequences. Like in the East, they talk about karma, cause and effect. You do something and there's a reaction. So I think it's the most natural thing in the world. I don't really need religion to know that there are consequences to the choices we make. So it's just and the other thing is, like, if there were no eternal hell, then everyone basically gets the same outcome. We all go to heaven, or we're all annihilated, or some of us go to heaven, some are annihilated. That's what some worldviews say. But to me, it just makes more sense that if the source or the creator, whatever you want to call God, if he's infinite in his dignity, then the abuses of the free will that he gave us, the consequences are going to be eternal. So yeah, it's intuitive to me that there's an eternal hell, and that there's an eternal heaven. So that's, even without religion, that's my intuition. So.
Well, and I also believe that if there is a God and there is no such thing as hell, and even if we create our own hells or whatever we do, I mean, the Hitler thing still is, I still work through that one sometimes, of that whole situation. But if God is all loving and knowing and forgiving, then eventually he would forgive Hitler. The jury's still out, because that's the part of faith. I mean, that's where you have to go on faith, because none of us know. None of us know what that is on the other side of death at this point, unless, so I don't know. I just kind of make that decision of what I think it should be, and just trust that he's being saved somehow, or he's asleep, or he's learning in another planet. I don't know how it works over there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he was here for a reason, and I can't imagine. I mean, that's a right of free will and free choice, and we all agreed to it somehow or another. There are parts that I still struggle with. I'll give you that.
Yeah. I
That's
think
why
we
it's like,
all.
just look to me, just look to myself, because that's the only thing I can control.
Yeah, you're not going to go to hell for the sins of Hitler, neither will I. Uh, so, I often think about Hitler. I have a soft spot in my heart for him because people are so nasty to him. Like, why is he the boogeyman? Why is he always the go-to guy? Like, I mean, okay, maybe he's evil, maybe he's in hell, okay, but I feel like it's a bit exaggerated. Like, there are plenty of bad guys in history, and I personally think he was human. I love him, and I wish him well. I want him to go to heaven and probably have a long stay in purgatory or whatever. But I don't know his heart. I don't know what he did on his deathbed, and I don't even know what he did in his life. That's the funny thing. It's like, you can read a history book, a textbook, or whatever. It's like, you should take it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying he was a good guy. I'm not saying that. All indications are he was a bad guy. but I have sympathy for the bad guys. I was a bad guy. I am a bad guy. Not as bad as Hitler, but that's the comparison we always make. We always like to say, well, I'm not that bad. I'm not as bad as Hitler. Like the poor guy. It's like, let's pick on someone
Well,
else.
but that comes down to how our bringing is us versus them, and that is far from any kind of spirituality of the us versus them. I mean, we're all connected. We don't know what happened to him as a child that caused him to do what he did. We don't know. Just like we don't know with some of the people that are in prison. I mean, a lot of this comes from our childhood and not having any tools in how to help ourselves. So what is it? So there's a cry for love and there's love. That's all there is. So if Hitler's doing what it is he's doing is a cry for love. That's how we have to look at it. So what do? You love them. When we had some of our presidents in the office, and oh my God, I would watch people go crazy, and it's just love them. Just love them. That's all you can do, because what else can we do? So as long as we're loving people that we may not understand, or the world is against them, just love them, because that's what they need. And love, because love is transcendental and it's etheric, they're going to feel it. And that's how I look at it, is send love to those that really need love, because they're hurting on some level.
Yeah, I just want to add an important distinction that some atheists miss, which is that you don't have to like humans, your fellow human, your enemy, whatever it is, your coworker, your boss. You don't have to like them, but you have to love them, right? And some of the atheists, they don't understand, because they see love on a spectrum, like I like them a lot, I really, really, really like them, and then I love them. That's not the way it is. Love is on a different dimension from our preferences, from our dispositions and chemistry and all these sorts of things. Those are real. I like you, I have good chemistry with you, and I love you, but they're on different axes. And so I don't have to like Hitler, but I do have to love him. And if I have someone that rubs me the wrong way in this world, I don't have to like them, but I have to love them. So I think that's a very important distinction. It's probably something you're well aware of, but I like to throw it out there just in case anyone hadn't thought about it.
No, that's very true. So tell our audience how they can get hold of you.
Well, you can go to my website, which is woefully neglected, like a lot of my social media, but my website is cvs-podcast.com, and all my social media links are there on the links page. The best place really to see what I've been doing lately is on my YouTube, and my handle on YouTube. They started doing the handles with the @ampersand. It's at is it Catholic Versus, or is it CVS-podcast? I think it's at CVS-podcast. So yeah, CVS just stands for Catholic Versus. So anyway, they can find me there. I'm also on Twitter. My handle is at Catholic_versus, versus being VS. So that's how people can reach me. But I've got a small but loyal audience, and it's a lot of fun meeting people on the podcast. I'm meeting people like you. I met a lot of people on Podmatch. I want to give a shout out to Podmatch, and I'm actually going to have the host of Podmatch on my podcast, Alex.
I got Alex coming on mine too.
Oh, no way!
Yep,
Cool.
I sure do.
Very cool. Nice guy.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, David. And it was a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a different spin of what I normally do. But you know what? That's what this is. It's a journey of an awakening spirit, no matter how you look at it. So we'll see everyone next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Kathleen Flanagan, your host on the Journey of an Awakening Spirit. And from my heart to yours, I hope you have a fabulous week.